Good day. Welcome back to the Vitality Project. I'm Dr. Bob. Yesterday, we introduced this idea of working on our shadows. I'm calling it shadow work for short. And it starts with our beginning to acknowledge to ourselves what the Bible calls our unseemly parts. It's an antiquated way to talk about what we're calling here our shadow. It's the parts of ourselves that we don't want to share with others. It can be a behavior or an attitude or some other self-perceived limitation. We just want to keep it secreted away. And why is that? Well, we talked about this yesterday. It's because I'm afraid you will judge, condemn, or possibly even reject me. So that's Jung 101. We talked about the psychology of Carl Jung. Enter Father Freud. Sigmund Freud was literally Carl Jung's teacher. And it was Freud who was the father of modern psychoanalysis. And for that matter, every other form of therapy, even if in reaction against him. And it was Freud also who posited the idea of the return of the repressed. Now, what did Freud mean by that? When we push the shadow out of our conscious awareness, even if sometimes it feels actually relatively effective, that does not necessarily mean that it is forgotten. It actually gets rerouted. You see, the body remembers. And that which I repress in my mind, in my psyche, may well then rise up in another area, a little bit like the whack-a-mole game is the one that comes to mind. You hit one whack-a-mole and it pops up in another place. And so I can repress in my psyche, but it will rise up somatically in my body. And that's really the derivation of the term psychosomatic. I push down something in my psyche, it arises elsewhere in my soma, in my body. So what we forget then, supposedly forget in our conscious mind, is literally remembered in our body's members, our arms, our legs, our torso, our gut. And so it's remembered, and oftentimes it's remembered quite symptomatically. So let's ask ourselves for today's homework to take a moment or two to recall any instance in which you've tried to put something out of your mind and discovered, much to your dismay, that attempt failed insofar as you experience what Freud talks about, the return of the repressed, that which gets pushed down comes back in another area. You know, remember for just a second, what we're aiming for here at the Vitality Project is a full, joyful, robust life. If you stop and think about it, anything that siphons off energy, and I guarantee you that repressing material inside of our psyches siphons off a tremendous amount of energy. It takes a lot of energy to hold that stuff down in the basement. And so in our attempt to repress the shadow, we're siphoning off energy. And that's maybe as good as it gets worse, because you can imagine that even as we attempt to repress something, we're not subtracting from our suffering, we're adding to our suffering, we're adding other distressful symptoms. And that strategy, while it may be effective short-term in terms of forgetting, is not effective long-term, because we remember what it is that we forgot, and it tends to come in the side door, the back door, and it's less out of conscious awareness. And the next thing that we know is we have some kind of psychosomatic symptoms. So we're definitely going to need to address this. So I'm going to ask you to reflect, to see if you can find a time in your life where you've done this, tried to push something out of your awareness and have it come back to haunt you, the return of the repressed. And then come back tomorrow, because we're going to start talking about skillful means for what we can do to address our shadow in some other way than to repress it. Thanks for joining me today here at the Vitality Project. Stay healthy, please, and be well, and I'll see you again here soon.